you challenge our election, you challenge everything that we stand on. And like I said, I'm from the neighborhood, and we don't really do politics like that.
The Prison Journalism Project features incarcerated writers sharing their experiences within the prison system. Marcus Henderson, an editorial associate with the Prison Journalism Project and inmate at San Quentin Prison, recently wrote about former President Donald Trump's attempts to overthrow the election. We're now joined by the co-founders of the Prison Journalism Project, Yukari, Kane, and Shaheen, Pasha. And this month, we've seen an insurrection on the Capitol, as well as Joe Biden being inaugurated as president. How do inmates consume the news and keep up on everything going on in the world?
I think they consume it voraciously. I mean, this is their link to the outside world. And what we find is that the men and women that we work with that write for us, they spend all day basically paying attention to what's happening in the world, flipping through channels, reading whatever they can get their hands on. So they are very active consumers of the news. And so they have a lot of opinions, but it really is their lifeline to what's going on outside.
And speaking of those opinions, what were the feelings of the inmates across the country on the day the Capitol was stormed? How were they wrapping their heads around what they were seeing and hearing about?
It was very similar to what we were experiencing outside. I mean, there was a lot of shock and consternation and concerns that democracy itself was being undermined.
What was going through my head when I was writing that piece is that I kind of seen what the events that happened at January 6th was leading up to. I think when people are kind of disconnected to the streets, disconnected to the people in general, the general public, because, that's what made Trump he connected with people. He gave them a voice. And we always say about being in prison, giving a voice to the voiceless. So when he gave them a false voice with some lies, and they attached to it because they felt like they wanted to be heard. And by not being heard, I kind of knew that reaction was going to happen because.
And President Biden is promising to make the criminal justice system more equitable, but is his past history of helping write the 1994 crime bill making inmates skeptical, or is the past the past?
Absolutely. I mean, I think the politics is such a complicated thing inside because both sides have been tough on crime in the past, and Biden has made a lot of promises, and so there's relief that he is now president, and there's a lot of skepticism as well, and with hope.
When the inauguration came, I think a lot of people had a sense of calm, and that was surprising to me. You had people that was like, okay, when you wake up in prison, it's already a tense situation because you don't know what the day will bring. And I think with Trump and his administration at that time and over the 4 years, he has made the whole country tense. So they didn't really know when they wake up what the day will bring. And that's like our day, like every day. But then when he left office and they seen the swearing in of Biden, I think everybody kind of breathed a sigh of relief, like, okay, now we can get back to some sense of normalcy.
And we mentioned that story written by Marcus. He leads off the story by describing the power and privilege Mr. Trump carries to not have to follow the same rules of law and order as many of the people who end up in prison do. Can you tell me about how inmates feel about those differences here?
I think that is a feeling that's across the board. We're finding that with our writers saying that whether they're in San Quentin or whether they're in Sing Sing or anywhere else, what we're finding is that are two sets of rules, and they are keenly aware of how the things that get them put behind bars, the things that have gotten our men and women lengthy sentences, are oftentimes not the same types of sentences and punishments that you're going to find for people of a different class. So class and privilege are things that we hear about all of the time. Even pardons and clemencies, there's this feeling that there is two different types of Americas: the ones that get sentenced and put away for long periods of time, fall into a certain class, and then if you have money, if you have status, then you are, I don't know if you're above the law, but you definitely get a different version of the law. And that's something that our writers across the country have been telling us.
And Marcus also describes nationalism between political parties in the same light as rival gangs. Why did that comparison, you think, click for him?
I think he was part of that culture himself, and he was exposed to it. He was touched by it, I mean, we love this piece because it just really stripped everything down to its core. One of the things that he says about he likens is that affiliation, that once you belong to a group like that, he likens it to a gang, that they can't, your people can't do any wrong in your eyes. He says they can shoot, threaten, or kill people. In all that craziness, you'll still support them, and they will support you. And the crazy thing is that he wrote this in December, before January 6th, before the inauguration, before any of this was happening.
And then fast forward, and we saw what we saw play out. Very interesting to get that perspective. Thank you both for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.